In the headline, Coalition backs Lowenfield numbers, says he reports to no one and no entity. CARICOM Chair Mia Motley says the truth hurts as she responds to critics of her statement on the Guyana elections. All in place for CJIA to reopen Wednesday for limited incoming flights. The inside story of the emergency medical technicians working on the front lines in the fight against COVID-19. And in sport, Avinash Ramzan and Akeem Green discuss West Indies preparations for the Test series against England. With the news, I'm Kurt Campbell. We're glad you could join us. First up, the country's Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield, on Friday said he's not bound by what the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, tells him to do, saying he has carried out his constitutional duties. In a statement, he said while the Commission makes certain policy decisions and provide guidance to the Chief Elections Officer for implementation by the Secretariat, he has to execute his duties as a constitutional officer, particularly in the conduct of elections. However, the Chief Elections Officer is not a constitutional position, but rather a statutory one. Lowenfield's mandate does not include determining what votes are valid, but he sought to do that in his latest report, and in so doing, he set aside over 115,000 votes so his calculation could hand the coalition a parliamentary majority of 33 seats to form the government. Lowenfield's statement to the press was specifically in reply to a Star News editorial which cited him for insubordination because he ignored the clear instruction he was given by the chair of GECOM, Justice Claudette Singh, to produce an election result based on the results of a national vote recount. The Starbuck News has called for Lowenfield to be dismissed. It said, no one who believes he can unilaterally choose who should be disenfranchised after their vote have been counted and recounted in accordance with all the relevant legal requirements should be allowed anywhere near a commission charged with overseeing democratic elections. Meanwhile, the coalition APNU-AFC on Friday morning latched on to the most recent report of the Chief Elections Officer. In so doing, the coalition cast aside the report of the CARICOM team, which its leader, President David Granger, had deemed the most important interlocutor in the recount process, which clearly established the PPP won the elections. Bibi Katoon reports.
The coalition APNU plus AFC has adopted the view that the Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield, acts in accordance with the Constitution and the law and take instructions from no other entity or person. In a statement, the coalition said that in presenting an election report that does not match the results of the national vote recount, Lowenfield has discharged his functions within the ambit of the law. The coalition noted that the Representation of the People Act requires the Chief Elections Officer to ascertain the valid votes cast in an election. It said that in keeping with the guidance settled by the Court of Appeal ruling Monday, Lowenfield prepared and submitted his election report on Tuesday, June 23rd. But the Court of Appeal offered no directions to the Chief Elections Officer. It merely offered an interpretation of Article 177(2) of the Constitution, which says that the party with the most votes wins the elections. In the view of two judges of the court, it should be most valid votes. No other declarations or orders were made. Further, the order of the court was put on hold by the very Court of Appeal, and that hold was further extended by the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is hearing an appeal. So Lowenfield could not claim to be acting on the guidance of the court in presenting his report when there is no such advice that is active at this time. Lowenfield's report gives the APNU-AFC coalition a victory with 171,825 votes. However, the votes which were certified as valid during the recount and backed by a CARICOM team, which scrutinized the process, showed a victory for the PPP. In his first report, based on official figures from the recount, Lowenfield certified that the PPP won the elections with 233,336 votes, but Lowenfield reduced their figures by 67,000 and put them at second place. There has been no explanation from him or GECOM on how he came up with his figures. The APNU plus AFC said the recount process revealed a plethora of grave irregularities. The coalition said the Elections Commission recorded anomalies, discrepancies and irregularities, the scale, size and scope of which were revealed only through tabulation and observation during the recount. In fact, most of those issues were raised only by the coalition, and these include ballots cast in the names of persons who are dead or had migrated. The coalition claimed that the Elections Commission investigated instances of voter impersonation and was provided with the relevant immigration records and death certificates of the competent statutory authority confirming that certain persons in whose names votes were cast were dead or were not in the jurisdiction on the day of the general and regional elections on March 2nd. But in fact, there was just one list provided by the police commissioner acting as the chief immigration officer after he was requested by the chair of GECOM, who was checking on the claims of the APNU-AFC. GECOM did no investigation to verify the list. The media investigated the list and found that it was inaccurate. Many of the persons who it was claimed were out of the country on elections day were in fact in Guyana and voted. The coalition noted that the report of the CARICOM observer team on the recount, handed in on June 13th, acknowledged the occurrence of anomalies, discrepancies, and irregularities. The CARICOM team did call for an investigation of the issues, but said none of them were so grave as to change the results of the elections. The coalition also took issue with the CARICOM assessment, saying the team only assessed 18% of the ballot boxes. The coalition said, and I quote, "The report of the Chief Elections Officer on the recount exercise is a substantial report which assessed all of the 2,339 ballot boxes." End of quote. The APNU-AFC coalition, in its statement, iterated its preparedness to abide by the Constitution and the Representation of the People Act, which provides for the declaration of the elections results. Bibi Katun, Newsroom.
Chair of CARICOM and Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, has responded to criticisms of her statement that the results of the national vote recount should be used to declare the results of the March 2nd elections. Mottley expressed shock at what she says is the bizarre elections process in Guyana, in which the Chief Elections Officer dumped over 115,000 votes as being invalid and did not include them in his elections report. During a press conference, she would only say that the truth hurts. Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu has led the government side in telling foreign powers who have been calling for the use of the results of the recount to be used to declare the results. Mottley spoke at a press conference earlier today in Bridgetown.
There has been some push. This is a question to you as chairman of the CARICOM. There has been some pushback from some corners in Guyana in response to your comments about the disappointment with some things that would have occurred within the last week or so. Would you like to respond to the persons who have been a little critical of your comments?
Now, the truth hurts. I have nothing more to say. The truth hurts. But what we must never do in CARICOM is avoid the truth and avoid our principles. Thank you very much and have a pleasant day.
As Guyana moves to the second phase of the reopening of the Cheddi Jagan International Airport CGIA on July 1st, a team of officials from the Ministry of Public Health, the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, and Immigration toured the airport to assess the COVID-19 procedures and guidelines in place.
Guyana's international airports are scheduled to reopen on July 1st, 2020, to limited incoming flights for citizens, permanent residents, international workers and agencies and diplomats. The Cheddi Jagan International Airport has installed a number of COVID-19 guidelines and procedures to ensure the safety of passengers and staff when the airport reopens. A site visit was done by officials from the Public Health Ministry, the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, and Immigration, checking the efficiency of the airport's procedures from arrival to port health checks and the various services necessary for entry into Guyana, and also looked at departure procedures and measures in place to allow safe travel. Aviation Security Manager at the Aviation Authority, Abraham Doris, said the Aviation Authority will be dedicated to conducting frequent surveillance to ensure the airport and airline operators are in compliance with the guidelines and procedures.
There were several walkthroughs that was done to match the process of passenger departure, passenger arrival, and this was captured in the regulations with the intent of enforcing safety and hygiene practices. And to have those forces comply with these requirements, and if there's a deviation from the compliance of these requirements, for there to be provisions where we can take some enforcement action and to keep everyone in check.
Chief Medical Officer Dr. Shamdeo Persaud noted that the systems in place may be more than the usual systems for traveling, but asked that passengers fully cooperate for their safety and the safety of others.
We want to provide you with the kind of care and service that will help you and help us as we all join hands together to control further introduction of COVID-19 into Guyana and any spread that might result from that. I do thank you and I look forward for full cooperation.
Meanwhile, Director for Air Transport, Saeed Suleiman, said it is essential that all airline passengers and other stakeholders understand what is required under the COVID-19 requirements.
And we are working to make sure that we have all the systems in place. The airline understands what will be the new requirements to operate into Georgetown, and the airport is also prepared to facilitate the movement of airlines and passengers safely through the airport and then into Guyana. So today we did a walkthrough. We're pleased with what we have seen, and we're happy with what measures the airport would have put in place. There are some areas we need to tweak a little bit, but by and large, we are pleased with what we have done.
Currently, the airport is in the first of the 4 phases in reopening the airport, which is planning. This will run to the end of this month and caters for repatriation flights, special organized flights, outgoing flights, medevac flights, technical stops, training, and also establishing regulations and standard operating procedures. The second phase implement includes the reopening for limited incoming flights for returning Guyanese and international workers scheduled to start on July 1st, 2020 to July 31st, 2020. The third phase will include an expansion of the second phase and will run from August 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020, and is expected to include scheduled outgoing flights. Guyana's airports are likely to return to full operation in early 2021. Reporting for the Newsroom, I am Isinella Patwo.
We tell you now that the Central Bank of Guyana has now projected that Guyana's economy will grow by 57% this year, mostly owing to the oil sector as other sectors take nosedive. The new project is 30% less than 87% projected at the start of the year. Governor of the Bank of Guyana, Dr. Gobin Ganga, during a panel discussion on Thursday night, said the non-oil sector will contract between 5 to 7%.
As you know, our economic fundamentals were very, very favorable prior to COVID. Our growth rate with oil was about 87% projected. Non-oil growth would have been just over 5% or about there. Our inflation rate would have been very, very low single digit. We would have had an increase in reserves as we were projecting. Our exchange rate would have remained, and we expect that to remain relatively stable. However, after COVID, or with the impact of COVID, obviously with respect to global demand declining from growth, we would have seen a significant decline in economic activities. With oil, after COVID, we would have projected 57% growth in GDP, which would have been a significant decline from where we were projecting to be prior to COVID. In non-oil growth, we are now looking at negative 5 to 7%. It could even be more if this is prolonged, because major sectors would have been hit, such as the services sector, transport, communication, education, administration, likewise wholesale and retail. Like manufacturing would have also been affected. So would have been agriculture, some subsectors. So what we would have seen would have been coming up from a very glorious outlook, where we were the star of the region and even in the world, to one where we are now, just like any ordinary country, being impacted by this pandemic.
A fire of unknown origin completely destroyed the ND&S furniture factory and everything in its La Jollity West Coast Demerara Thursday night. The fire started around 10:30 p.m. and also damaged a 3-story building which stored furniture and housed the main office. The owner, Parshram Mahadio, resided on the top floor. The fire service is continuing its investigation into the fire, and the family says it is too early to ascertain the losses.
The entire factory was destroyed, where we have every different section that involves manufacturing furniture. A lot of raw material that we have in stock as well, from wood to ply to fabric, all our machinery, everything was destroyed. The building caved in and everything was destroyed there. Next door to it, we have a 3-story building that houses the first and second level, has the showroom and main office, and the upper flat is the residence for the boss. So the inside is pretty much damaged for all 3 levels, all 3 flats.
Anybody was inside the building at the time?
The boss lives here, so he was inside by himself, just him. But he thankfully came out. He got out safe. A neighbor saw the fire happening and came to him.
Do you have any idea what started the fire?
Everything is being investigated right now. Like I said, we have the police and the fire department here right now.
Okay.
So we don't know what caused the fire.
The Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, GGDMA, on Friday said it is alarmed by the recent upsurge in the number of cases of the novel coronavirus in certain mining areas and said illegal border crossings is to be blamed. Isinella Patwa reports.
The Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, which represents small and medium-sized mining operations, claimed that most of the cases can be traced and are connected to illegal cross-border activity at mining landings and areas where miners dwell. According to the GGDMA, these cases have been linked and traced to itinerant workers who are not directly involved or associated with mining or specific operations. The association said it appears that COVID-19 is being spread at borders, which remain porous because of lax enforcement of border control measures. This must be addressed immediately by the authorities, the association stated. The GGDMA said that at mining landings, registered shops need to follow the COVID-19 guidelines and the curfew which is in place. The association is calling on all miners to maintain strict compliance with the measures in place to prevent the spread of the virus, including avoiding congregating unnecessarily at public spaces. Specifically, shops are reminded that no social gatherings or the consumption of food and drinks are to be allowed on premises. Customers must purchase and leave, the GGDMA stated. The association said it is against illegal shops which encourage mining workers to flaunt the COVID-19 guidelines and breach the curfew. It said illegal shops must be removed and they called on the relevant authorities to assist in this regard. The association said activities at landings and camps that promote the spread of the disease and contribute to the disobedience of the curfew and COVID-19 guidelines must stop. The GGDMA said camp managers must follow guidelines and enforce the rules established by the engaged with the COVID-19 steering committee on whatever decisions are being made for the gold and diamond mining industry of Guyana to help alleviate this disease. The association said it continues to work with PAHO to develop a guideline for mining, and this is expected to be completed by next week. Reporting for the newsroom, I am Isinella Patwo.
A total of 19 companies have been shortlisted. Bibi Katoon reports.
The government intends to hire an oil marketing offshore Guyana. The contract is expected to last for 1 year. As part of the process, a committee was formed, tasked with producing a shortlist to be submitted by the expression of interest. This activity reports as Guyana's first 3 oil lifts collected its second shipment in May. Guyana received over $54 million for its first lift in February. The total holdings of the Natural Resources Fund as of June 11, 2020 is over $94 million, inclusive of a $4 million paid for royalty for oil produced and sold from the Stabroek Block in the first quarter of 2020. The Natural Resources Fund is being kept at the New York Federal Reserve Bank. Bibi Katoon, Newsroom.
Here now is the daily situation report on COVID-19 in Guyana.
Of the 68 tests that were done in the last 24 hours, there are 15 new cases, bringing the total number of cases to 230. A total of 109 persons have recovered. The number of deaths remain at 12. In institutional isolation, we now have 109 active cases. In institutional quarantine, we have 16 persons, and the number of patients in the COVID-19 ICU is 1. We have conducted 2,423 tests, with 2,193 of these being negative. I wish to make a special mention of the frontline workers in regions number 1 and 7 and the staff of the National Public Health Reference Laboratory for your continued effort in this fight. Our workers are continuing to put themselves at risk to ensure that we can detect this disease early and isolate those persons who are sick so that we can contain this pandemic. We call again on the residents of Moruca and those of the mining communities in Region Number 7 to heed the warning. This disease is easily transmitted when you're in close contact with someone who is positive. We have indicated that a large number of positive cases in both of these regions have no signs or symptoms, so they are what we call asymptomatic. These persons can transmit this disease, and you will not even know that they are sick because there is no sign to tell you this. I continue to urge you to wear a mask and observe the physical distance guidelines provided. Tushos and village councillors, operations owners, you all have a role to play in this pandemic. We need you to impress upon your villagers and workers the importance of what we are saying.
Despite the fear of working as frontline workers during COVID-19 and being at risk of contracting the deadly disease, emergency medical technicians, EMTs, continue to work around the clock to aid persons in emergencies.
The coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic allows for a number of persons to work from the comfort of their home, but those do not include emergency medical technicians, EMTs, who continues to work as usual and are at a high risk of being exposed to the disease. Chief EMT at the National Emergency Medical Service, Nandaram Dat, said that none of the 76 EMTs who work around the clock have contracted COVID-19. This is credited to the ongoing training and professionalism executed when the EMTs respond to a case. The staff is also all equipped with personal protective equipment. The National Emergency Medical Service was launched in 2016 and has grown tremendously over the years.
So far, none of our staff even had presented any of the signs and symptoms, which has been the biggest thing for us so far. And we've been responding to almost every single case so far. We've had patients involved in motor vehicle accidents. We've attended to medical patients from their homes. But in our EMS settings, we treat every patient as positive until proven otherwise. So we've been educating our staff as to how to don or put on the appropriate PPEs and removal, sanitizing of the ambulance after every call. So these guys have been doing an excellent job, and so far we've had no cases from our EMS end. So in the beginning phases, the biggest challenge was, I think, was the fear of being exposed, and most of the staff, I had sleepless nights in the beginning phases because it was pretty new and everyone was worried about if they're going to be exposed, they're going to be putting themselves, their colleagues at risk, and also taking it home to their family. So through continuous education and training, this has improved significantly.
25-year-old Tramel Smart joined the profession 2 years ago.
I'm an emergency medical technician for the past 2 years, and being in the healthcare field is something that I've aspired since I was a child. So when I got called to be an EMT, I was excited. I read up about it, and knowing that I have a chance in saving people's life is something that I've always wanted to do. And it's exciting to me because being there first and seeing whenever someone is having a bad day and stabilizing them before they get to the hospital is something that I've always wanted to do.
Tion Bourne has been an EMT for 3 years now and says it was always what he wanted to do.
Well, being an EMT at first, to be honest, I had no medical training. But after being trained as an EMT, the knowledge that I gained, it was that of really an importance because I learned how to garner healthcare practices for myself, for my family members, and my associates that I work with also. And I've developed in many, many areas, and I am very thankful for this opportunity to be an EMT.
Quality Improvement Officer Bhumika Sukdio says it is important that the EMTs always follow protocols when out in the fields. The emergency medical services are available within Georgetown only and is a collaborative effort between the Ministries of Public Health and Public Security.
Based on our guidelines, the EMTs are expected to, on a daily basis, ensure that they have proper equipment, functioning equipment on the ambulance. They're also responsible for handling and taking over of those equipment, ensuring that the ambulance is always stocked so that when they go on calls, they're readily prepared to do their job. Also, following basic guidelines when it comes to treating patients.
Meanwhile, working during COVID-19 remains a challenge for EMTs, especially when citizens are hostile and do not recognize EMTs as medical personnel. It was also noted that the Ghana Police Force does not provide much support to EMTs.
It was scary. It's a scary. I was like, wow, we have to do this. Like, it's like risking your life, knowing that this is something that this is a career that you choose, right? And you will have to be out there risking your life, knowing that there are patients who might be infected. So we normally treat all patients as if they are infected until proven.
It has been very hard. I must be honest, it has been very hard for us as EMTs because the dangers we face with patients out there, every patient we have to treat as though they are infectious until proven guilty, right? Or otherwise. But so far it's been very dangerous for us. But we're thankful for the protective gears that we have when we go out. We have to do with all patients, and we have gears to protect us when we go there. So we're thankful for that also. Protection is one of the most, number one thing that we look for, protection. Because on scenes, accident scenes, somebody might be assaulted. Somebody might be in a situation where they were shot. And EMTs arrive on scene, we know unprepared when we get there because we don't know if the culprit is still there. And sometimes on-scene police are there, but the police, they don't give us that support in managing the crowd and managing people who might be hostile to us. So we're asking also for the police to come on hand with this system so that when we get on scene, especially accident scene, assault scene and so forth, that when they're there, they do the job to maintain the safety of the EMTs.
As Guyana continues to fight the spread of COVID-19, persons are being urged to not engage in prank calls and also provide accurate information in an emergency case. Reporting for the Newsroom, I am Isanella Patwo.
When the Newsroom returns, the financial, weather and bird reports along with sport.